Well, thanks for being with us here today.
Thanks for having us.
Could you both tell me a little bit about where you were born and grew up?
Good.
Well, I was born in Richmond, actually in Highland Springs, Sandstone area, and grew up in that area. Went to Varana High School and graduated from Varana in '82. Went to St. John's Catholic Church as basically a cradle Catholic. And I did leave the church for a while, but so I've pretty much been in the area most of my life, except my service time.
My family home is in Maryland on the Eastern Shore, but my dad was in the Air Force, so I was born in Wichita, Kansas, and traveled lots of cool places, but ended up here, and been here since I was 11 years old. Went to Varana High School. We didn't really know each other then, but... so.
Was your faith important to you as a child?
I wouldn't say necessarily as much when I was a child. That's one of the reasons I think I had left the church when I got older. There was I had a lot of questions that went unanswered, and I would ask my parents, and it was like, well, you know, that's because it's the way it's done. You know, I didn't get the why do we do this? And, you know, this is because it was just that's the way we do it. So when I was about 18, 19 years old, I kind of left the church frustrated, and so. Yeah, I went to church every Sunday. It was a requirement with my family, but I can't say that it felt it in my heart. So maybe not. But when I got older.
And what brought you back?
Actually, I'd attended a couple other services when I was out of the house and on my own, and I didn't really care for, you know, the Protestant services that I had gone to. And then when we got married in her mother's church and by a Baptist minister. And I was standing in church and I realized what I was missing. I had been missing God in my life as she was coming down the aisle. So shortly after we were married, I told her, I want to go back to church. And I said, I want to try the Catholic Church again. And she said, well, I'll go with you. She'd been going some to her mother's church. And so she said, I'll go with you. So we went back to the church I grew up in, and just took it from there. Shortly after there, they had adult confirmation and the catechumen program, and she was going to convert. So I asked Father Jim at the time, who was the priest there, I said, since she's going to go through the catechumen program, can I go through that with her? Because I was afraid confirmation would assume that I knew more than I did about my faith. And he said it wasn't a problem. So I went through the catechumen program with her so that I could actually learn more about the Catholic faith than I knew growing up. And I was ready by then. So shortly after we got married, we went back to the church.
Wow, that's really great. And then Mona, how about you? What was your early faith like as a child?
We went to church regularly. I was Protestant, and my recollection, I spent a lot of time with my grandmother, and so we would go to church all the time, and she sang in the choir, and of course I sang on the children's choir, and it was always just part of our life. I never even thought about it. We have a family church that my great-grandfather helped build, so it's kind of one of those things that church has always been part of our life and God. So.
And then did you move around? Did your family move around a lot when you were?
Did.
Yeah. How did you keep faith? You know, because there would be different communities all the time. How did you?
I went through a lot of communities. I mean, all the way up until at least college, you know, I was going to a different church wherever we were, usually through friends if it didn't have family around, because, of course, we were away from family a great deal. So.
And then as a young adult, was there anything that was different in your faith life as compared to when you were, you know, maybe a smaller child, or is it?
I don't know if anything was really different. I think I was a typical youth, you know. Once I hit college, I do my own thing, kind of, you know. But there were times that I go and times that I didn't, and it just wasn't as important, but it was there.
And was there any person, like a lay person or a priest or a nun, who was really important in helping grow your faith?
I wouldn't say it was anybody in particular. We love Father Jim at St. John's. I think he's passed on now. We were there till he retired, and I don't know. It's just His homilies were great. The whole church was kind of alive at the time, and once we went through our catechumen program, and we really kind of joined the church and threw ourselves into it. I joined the Knights of Columbus. We were doing fish fries, and we just got really active in the church. And I don't know, he just, I can't say he personally pulled us aside and influenced us, but I think just his homilies and how, alive he helped make the parish, kind of, helped me along anyway.
Mm-hmm. And then how did you two meet?
Well, we knew of each other in high school, but his brother married my best friend. Okay. And so we kind of showed some interest at their wedding, all the wedding festivities. We were both in the wedding, so
we started dating shortly after their wedding, and then we got married 2 years after they were. Yeah. So we dated for about 2 years before we actually got married ourselves.
And how did you know that you wanted to get married? Or was there a moment, or was it?
I don't know. I just knew. My dad knew when he met her, when we were dating.
He said that.
He said when I met her, he said, I knew she was the one. I knew you were going to marry her. So he knew it. I didn't necessarily know it at the time. My cousin was visiting, and she knew it. So it must have been some way that I looked at her or the way I was around her. I'm not sure, but both of them knew it. And they told me, I knew it as soon as I met her. So I don't know what it was, but, something. I gave off a vibe. She gave off a vibe. I don't know. But the people around us knew that we were going to be together, I guess.
That's really great. Could you tell us a little bit about your family?
Well, we have 18-year-old twins, and we have a 17-year-old who's a senior in high school. So that's our family, besides our, 2 fur babies, a cat and a dog.
And what are your kids' names?
We have Marissa and Kaylin Paul, who are twins, and Samuel is our youngest.
Okay, thanks. And is it right that you homeschooled your children? Is that correct? Yeah.
We did.
And then can you tell us why that was the right choice for your family?
Well, I remember when they were in the NICU. My twins were born early, and they were in the NICU, and my one son had some issues, the oldest one, and the nurse said, boy, you're going to have your hands full with that one, And then we realized when they were younger that things would happen, little things like we had a game where it did the ABCs. And if I said, what comes after B, he could say C. But if he saw all those letters up there in front of his face, he couldn't pick it out. Mm-hmm. So we figured out he learned differently. Mm-hmm. And so we decided we would just go with it and work with him, because we figured out it might be a little bit of a challenge in school. But all 3 of them seemed to flourish and enjoy it, and we loved it. It changed our lifestyle.
How is that?
I can't believe how it was exciting to learn so many things. Sometimes there were things that we learned or didn't learn in school. We're like, oh, we didn't know that, But there were times when we could do things. My great aunt had a stroke, and she's my godmother, and we just took off. School went with us, Mm-hmm. Or if they wanted to do something fun or different, we just take off and we do it, and school would go with us. It just became part of our family and our life.
Yeah, if they didn't understand something, we just take a field trip. We just pick up and go. It was great because we could learn. And one of the things, we knew we couldn't do parochial school, and one of the good aspects was we could incorporate our faith into our kids' upbringing. So that was part of their curriculum as far as their homeschooling went.
Yeah, I was just going to ask how you passed your faith along to your kids. So homeschooling was part of it, and then what else?
Just the being able to go on field trips. When they were studying Williamsburg and early American civilization, we went to Williamsburg for the day. They have a homeschool week. It was $5 to get in, and they got to participate. They gave them a paper, and they had all these errands they had to run from one place to the other, and the people there in Colonial Williamsburg would talk to them just like they were one of the citizens of Williamsburg, and they had stuff they had to do, and they got to bake bread, and it was great. It's just whenever you wanted to do something, you just picked up and went there, and it was just a different way of learning rather than just sitting and reading it in a book.
And we could go to a church whether it was Catholic or not, but just kind of show them, the evolution of faith in America and the different things that were going on. And they've developed a real love of just the beauty of the different aspects of different churches. And like our youngest loves photography, just loves it. And that's one of his favorite things, is to take pictures in churches. One day it was St. Anne's, the Feast of St. Anne. And so we went to St. Anne's Church. And he took pictures all in there. We gave some of them to the church just because we could do that. It was part of homeschooling. It was part of our life. That's how we passed it on.
And so you didn't have to plan vacations around school breaks. You could just
we picked up and started when we wanted to. We rolled into the summer if we needed to, or we could quit early if we felt like they were, where they needed to be for the year. And with public school, you can only go as fast as the slowest student. With homeschooling, when they got it, you moved on. You didn't have to assign a whole bunch of homework that night. If they were getting it, you didn't have to sit and dwell on it for them. So they could move on. Some subjects we had to stay longer on. Some subjects we moved through real quick. And one of the things I liked about incorporating a religion into their school was I didn't have my parents didn't have the resources that we have now, because when I would ask them why, they would say, oh, that's because that's the way we've always done it in church. When I didn't know for sure from what I had learned since I was confirmed Catholic as an adult, I could go look up, or we could go and ask. And when they had questions, I didn't want to say that's because that's the way it's always been done. I could tell them this is why we do this. And so I think that helps them. I think, at least for the most part, I think they have a stronger faith at this age than I did at the same age.
And it's amazing the times that I've emailed or called Chris Jenkins or Father and said, I don't know the answer to this question. But I think that solidifies for them that, first of all, that the people that are sharing their faith and leading us are willing to answer our questions, even from a kid, or that they can go and find any resource they want and say, hey, I can learn about this somewhere.
What forms of prayer did you use as a family?
Well, I think one of the big ones is the rosary. I discovered that I like to make rosaries a while back, and so I made everybody rosaries in the family, and I got to the point where I was making them for lots of people, and we would say it together as a family. And as I make a rosary for somebody, I usually pray over the rosary. So it's, you make a B, you make a Hail Mary, you pray the Hail Mary. You make another Hail Mary, you pray the Hail Mary. So I still like to make, I haven't been able to make one in a while just because of the scheduling, but I do still like to make them. And I've been doing it for about 15 years now, maybe, about 15 years. So, but that was a big one for us.
And how do you think the rosary helped? Because it's, a very meditative prayer, and kids were little, I guess, when you're doing this. Were they?
They said it, I think, by rote at first.
Yeah, sometimes they would get wiggly, of course. Yeah. But I think that over time, it became a calming situation to say that. And there are times when they've been stressed even as older teens. They would text me and say, Mom, I'm really nervous about this. And I'd be like, Hail Mary. And somebody would email me back and say, full of grace. Just go around the little circle and, until we finished it.
Oh, that is so cool.
Yeah.
That's great. When in your life have you felt closest to God?
Well, I just ran into somebody upstairs, and she's part of one of my closest times. As I mentioned, I was very, very close to my grandmother, and she would pick me up on a Friday afternoon and drop me off at school on Monday, a lot of times. And she passed away several years ago, and it was very, very hard for me. And we came back to town, but during her funeral, her favorite thing to sing was How Great Thou Art. And she had a beautiful voice, and she would sing that at church. The person who was supposed to sing it didn't show up on time. That was missed at her funeral. So we came back to Mass the following Sunday, and it was time for Eucharist, and Paolo was here to sing, the great tenor that attends here sometimes, and he sang How Great Thou Art. And as I was getting Eucharist, I just happened to look down, and the Eucharistic minister was named Ruth, which was my grandmother's name. Oh. And we made a friendship. I ran into her later, and I explained how important that was to me. And we've become very good friends ever since then. But I felt like God was just saying, it's going to be okay. You know, I'm here, and your grandmother's wonderful. So.
Great. And I wanted to go back to the rosary, because another question that I had about that. That meditative prayer, do you think that helped your kids now? Like you said, like when they're maybe stressed out, they text you. How do you think, regularly including prayer, whether it was rosary or anything else, in their lives is helping them now?
I mean, our daughter's very involved with the Catholic campus ministry. So she goes to, when they say the rosary, she goes a couple times a month. And I know that when we go to like work camp or it's become something very important to her to spend time in adoration. And my son has said several times, he'll say after Mass, he'll say, I think I needed to hear that. I think I need to go, go think about this. So I know that he's spending time, and, I know that he reads. But I don't know, we share it as a family, but I don't go say, hey, have you prayed today? Or what's going on with the rosary? Or so I think
It seems like you can see
part
it
of it, yes.
manifested in their life.
Yes.
Yeah. Have there been specific moments of struggle or difficulty that you'd like to talk about, that you felt strength from your faith?
Mine is similar to one you asked a couple minutes ago, is being closer to God and the strength in the faith. My mother passed away from breast cancer in 1998, and I had the opportunity to be there at the moment when she passed with my dad. And it's like, back before I had, come back to the church, I'm not sure I could have gotten through that time period. It was a very difficult passing, and I'm not sure I could have gotten through it without God. I felt like He was there because my dad was on one side of my mother, I was on the other. We're holding her hands in the hospital, telling her how much we loved her as she took literally her last breath. And I felt like God was there to receive her. We felt His presence, and when she passed, the people cleared the room, and my dad and I got on our knees, and we prayed the Our Father and stayed there for a little short time with just us, and I can't help but feel God was there with me.
Oh, definitely, yeah. How about your involvement in the parish here? Has there been a time where you've been particularly grateful for the support of this parish?
I think we've become more involved as the kids got older, and I've made a lot of friends. It's been amazing because I think when you have young kids and you're trying to keep up with everything they do, sometimes you get a little disjointed. Sometimes you feel like, oh, I don't have any friends, or I don't know who to talk to, or does this happen to everybody, And once we became involved, it was amazing to see how many people just reach out to you and say, hey, why don't you and the kids do this, or why don't... So I think being involved in CHIRP and marriage ministry, and we've done a couple things.
We've done work camp a couple
camp.
years, and that was I actually loved it more than I thought I would. It was hard work, working with the teenagers and working beside the teenagers during that time. It was really rewarding. And I also work with Rebecca Oxenrider some. My schedule doesn't permit me to be part of any real committees or anything. I'm just kind of a miscellaneous go-to. When she needs something done, she just calls me up and says, I need this done. Can you take care of this? And it's not all the time. It's just whenever she needs it. So it's like that's kind of, and in some ways it helps me pay the church back because when I was unemployed in 2009 when the semiconductor plant went under back in the East End in the 2009 time period, and we were strapped financially, and we were struggling with our bills, and the church actually helped us with our electric bill for a short period of time, and so this is able to. I feel like I'm able to kind of pay the church back, even though, financially they helped us out by doing whatever they need done or whenever they need me. I was like, contact me. I'll do whatever I can, and I can kind of pay it back to them, and in whatever kind of labor they need at this point. And but it really helped during the time that I was unemployed and looking for work.
Oh, that's great. You said you really enjoyed participating in work camp. What was it that you really got a lot out of?
One of the things I really liked was working with the kids, working with the teenagers and interacting with them, working beside them the whole time. I didn't want to just supervise. I was out there swinging a hammer and lifting the lumber just like they were. But I really enjoyed the day-to-day, working with them. But the satisfaction of building something that somebody really needed. This past year, we built a 50-some-odd foot wheelchair ramp for a lady who hadn't been out of her house for 2 years because her ramp was broken and she couldn't get out. So we built this ramp for her to be able to. She tried to come down the ramp in the middle of construction because she was so excited to be out of her house, and I was kind of. We're kind of scared. Like, please go back up here. There's no railings yet. And it was pretty high up because we were up in the mountains, but she was at the bottom of the mountain, and it's where it flooded. So the bottom of her house was actually about 6 to 7 feet above ground. And they had this, I don't know, the base of the house, because that's where the water floods. So this ramp was way up, and that's why we had to build it so long, because the rise had to be so much, or whatever, the way it came down, the grade or whatever. So we had to build it really long for it to finally get down to the ground. So we were a little worried that she was going to fall off of this thing. But once it was built, she was able to come down in her electric wheelchair and go all around her neighborhood. And so it was kind of able to provide her that freedom of being able to get out. And just seeing the look on the residents' faces when you help them do something that, that needed to be done around their house and they couldn't do it. It's just, that's why I feel like we're here. That's some of the core of our religion, that not just the rites that we do, but just to be able to help somebody. And my daughter had been talking about it because she's been to work camp for 5 years.
All 5 years that she could.
So she always talked about it, and we've gone the last 2, and I'm ready to go again.
Yeah, I went. That was my third.
Her third.
It was really funny because a friend of hers who was not Catholic, they have something younger. And she goes, how come we don't have anything like that? And at the time, you had to be rising through 10th grade, and you could go after your senior year. And they said, we're going to lower it this year to rising 9th grader, which she happened to be. And she was like, I get to go.
Oh, that's great.
And she talked about it. We had to go. And then we talked him into going, and it's just part of our family now.
And then in addition to seeing how this woman reacted to this freedom, what was it like to watch the kids see what they had accomplished?
They were amazing. The first year I did it, I had really young kids, and they were all over the place. They were 8th graders rising to 9th graders, and they need a lot more management. but this past year, I had seniors and rising college freshmen, and you go tell them, okay, this is what we need. And they would work in partners, and they would go off, and they would work it out between them, and they would do it. And it's like, it was just amazing. You just give them instructions, and they just took it from there. They didn't really want you standing over them, but you would just give them a project. They would go, and they were so excited to have it done. They were just unbelievable. In fact, they took little pieces of scrap lumber, and everybody had to sign the scrap lumber for everybody to take home. And I still have it. It's just a little piece of 2x2, and everybody that worked on that particular site signed it, and they signed each other's, and so we took that home, and they just absolutely loved being there. They just you let them take charge. They have a prayer person and a cheerleader person, and they all just jump in and start doing it, and it's just amazing to watch. And they take their roles seriously there, and I enjoyed it. I didn't really have to manage but so much. I just got to work and just guide them a little bit, and it was amazing. I enjoyed it.
One of my favorite parts about work camp is seeing all the seminarians work with the kids and some of the priests. And it is so amazing. They do everything. They come and they work on the sites with us. They play with the kids during break time. And Father Joseph Anthony from UVA wears his hassock all the time. So he's out there playing Frisbee, and he's pretty competitive. He's out there playing Frisbee with the kids, and I think it just speaks volumes because they just feel like, hey, I know this person. It's not just someone of authority or someone older than I am. They play with me, they worship with me, they work with me. It's really important. And I think, sometimes we know them by first name. We know them when they're young. And it's so hard. We're going to have to call them Father one day? No. So I think that's amazing.
And then you had mentioned that you worked in Christ Renews His Parish. What is that ministry like, and what did you?
Well, I think they're changing that now. I think it's being called Welcome.
Yeah, but it's a ministry that talks about the community or works together to build our community so that we can be of more service. Because obviously, if you know more people, it's easier to say, "Hey, come on, let's go do this." And I was surprised when I first went, and I loved it very much. And I loved being the host the next time around. It was just a beautiful experience. I love that we could be so open. Like I said, sometimes you feel a little disjointed when your kids are young, but it was like an instant bond. Here we are, we're worshiping together, we're sharing our lives together, and we've all been through things. And you don't always want to say, oh, this bad thing happened, whether it's an illness or something you did or, unless you can trust them. And it's like, oh, we're in this together.
And what created that instant bond?
I think the openness of witnesses, hearing their stories, and then willingness to talk about it even afterwards or if something happened. So.
And is there like a weekend retreat, and then could you tell? Did you both do Christ?
I also went through it, but our group, the men's group, wound up being canceled. We were supposed to do the next one, but we couldn't get enough participation from the men to have another one. But it really was. It's kind of some of the witnesses are pretty raw, pretty. These guys are opening themselves up, and then you open yourself up at the table. During the discussions, but it's pretty powerful, and you still see the same people that you were in your chirp group, and you kind of refer to them as chirp brothers or chirp sisters, and you kind of really get to know them during that 2 days you're together, because they don't want you to really go home, so you spend the night in a hotel partnered with somebody, and then you come back early the next morning and you spend the entire day with the people. It's almost like a lifetime in a sense. You really get to know the people that you're with, and then we actually prepared for the next chirp session, which we couldn't put on, but every week we're meeting with these same people, praying with them, meeting with them, practicing our witnesses that we're going to do. And you kind of really get to know, the people in your group. And so it's helped me get to know more parishioners and more intimately in some respects. So we're sorry that it didn't really make it here, but maybe with the new programs that they'll be able to do something similar.
We're still involved with their lives, even though it's been, 2 years now. We're still involved with their lives. We hear things, I'm studying for this test to do this, or, I'm going to have a grandchild, and it's very exciting. And it's, we're there if somebody's ill.
So there's still that closeness and that bond of like a community within the community right here in the parish, right?
I had actually instance where a couple times Rebecca said, I have somebody that that needs to be moved, and a lot of times I'll grab one of my kids if it's one item or a couple items, and we'll go move whatever it is they need to be moved. But then a couple times I've had an instance where they said, they need to move this homeless family into an apartment. Can you help out? And so I'm going, that's a lot of stuff. So I actually put it out to my church brothers, anybody available to help me move this, and I've had a number of them respond to me and were able to help me. So, it's worked out, to help build that relationship. I think it's a great program, and I think if it had taken off, it would have been really good for helping people get in touch with other people in the parish, especially when they need them.
And then do you also participate in marriage ministry, is that right?
Yeah, we do.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, we decided to go one night. It said something about a movie and dinner, and we were like, why don't we do that? And it turns out there were some friends there, and then people we didn't know, and it was nice to meet couples, and they were like, oh, well, we need help. So we kind of got involved. But I think it's just evolved into this wonderful time where we get to learn and grow as a couple with other couples. And it's not always serious prayer. We just did the 21 Undeniable Secrets of Marriage. After Dr. Hunt came here, we did the book, and it was really a follow-up and a strengthener, and that was amazing. But sometimes we just do something fun. So we're very excited to be part of something that enriches our marriage, but also enriches other people's marriage.
And what are some signs of it enriching your own marriage?
Well, it opens up the discussions. They have some discussions that maybe you wouldn't think of to talk about when you're at home, so to speak. And so you go to the sessions, and we actually help plan the sessions with a core group of people that set it up, and then during the actual the meeting or we have potlucks a lot of times. We'll have those questions where we can talk about it, and then even if we don't finish, we can still talk about it on the ride home. But it gives us that opportunity where we may not think of a question or something that may be bothering us or something that we might want to say. It kind of opens the door for us to be able to talk about it. And it's like, well, I didn't know that was bothering you, or I didn't know that this is something that concerns you, but it was brought up in one of the books that we may be doing at the time, or whatever we've done a couple different projects with it. So it's like whatever we're doing at the time, it sometimes opens the door for that dialogue that we don't always get.
And do you also get the tools to help you discuss those things that are difficult?
Yeah, that's one of the good things. We usually have the documentation, the books are there to help, and it helps with other couples, because we'll talk about it. They have stories and we have stories, and so it kind of gives us those resources also.
And did your children actually help teach ballroom dancing? Is that right?
Yes, and they're doing it again soon.
Really?
Yeah. Our kids have been involved in ballroom dancing for the last 5 years at different levels. So they all ended up in what they call the advanced group, but our youngest is what they call leadership, who actually does the teaching. And our daughter was on exhibition, which is, they go around to nursing homes and do different things. And so one day we were talking about it, and they're like, I'd like to learn the ballroom dance. I'm like, well, let's bring them here. And it was kind of more of a personal, just our kids came. But we had a really great time. We had a big potluck, and everybody got together, and Joyce strung lights in the hallway, so we had it like a real dance. It was a lot of fun. It was beautiful.
They taught some basic steps, and
yes.
We did some basics, and now they wanted to do it again. So
but
coming up, we have a big one where the actual group is going to come.
The whole group is coming, so they'll be doing
have
the
an
exhibition
and everything.
So my youngest son is so excited beyond words that he's like, I'm going to show them St. Mary's. I'm like, we're going to be downstairs, right? He goes, no, they're going to see our church. They're going to see our friends. And, he is so excited because it's a beautiful thing, the ballroom dancing. It changed our kids as far as extra social behavior. You teach them please and thank you. You teach them how to behave. This reinforces it beyond belief. And the thought of dancing is kind of like a leadership and a shared partnership, which hopefully will carry on into the rest of their life or maybe their marriages.
Well, I'm sure you're setting a wonderful example for them. That's wonderful. And then what else are you involved in as a family? Are your kids involved here at the church with work camp? Is there anything else?
I've done altar server.
My
oldest son likes to do the cross at Easter.
Yeah, and he loves to do the cross. And he's like, I want to do that.
So he likes to carry the cross on Good Friday.
He's kind of quiet and shy, so it was a big deal for him to say, I want to do that. So they find their things and get involved.
Yeah, because that's pretty central.
Yes.
Yeah. Are there any other ministries that you've participated in? We pretty much captured it.
I think we
here at church, yes.
Here at church,
Yeah.
Is there anything that you're doing outside of church that you consider a ministry or
dinners for Caritas? I think really our focus is, we're moving on from homeschooling, but I'm still active in the homeschool community right now. But the people that we meet, we try to share our faith and just example and caring. We have friends that were like, just come to marriage ministry. A lot of them were Catholic at one time and need to revert back. We'd like them to just see, how loving and how open St. Mary's is and the Catholic faith is. And so that's kind of our focus right now.
Yeah, we have some friends that are lapsed Catholics, and we encourage them quietly without, because when people, you don't want to be too over the top with some people, and so we just quietly, we're going to church. You're more than welcome. There's one family that we've gotten to come to a couple midnight masses with us. We're still trying to get them to come regularly, but it just works slowly, because I think that was the big thing with me. After having left the church for almost 10 years, I think God worked slowly, pulling me back a little bit at a time, just a little bit here, a little bit there, over time. And I think I didn't realize I was being pulled back. And it's just different things in my life that pulled me back to Him. And I guess the penultimate moment was standing in the church waiting for Mona to come down the aisle. I realized I'm missing, God in my life. And I didn't know it at the time, I didn't know it until that time. But there were other moments in my life with friends that He's kind of stepped in and kind of pulled me back to some of His teachings I didn't even realize at the time. So, that was the big moment for me, I guess.
When you were talking about encouraging other people to come to church, but not being, it sounds like what you're saying is you're not being overly preachy about it, if you will. So what is it that you do to encourage them? Is it the way you live your life? Is it just, one-on-one
Some of it is
discussions?
just, but we also talk about, the music is really beautiful. Just some of the aesthetic aspects, we'd love for you to come to dinner. A lot of times what we'll do is the midnight mass is big for us, or Easter Vigil, either one. We like to go to the evening masses for that. But we'll have snacks or dessert after church. Come to the house after church, just kind of to coax them along a little bit. And want them to ask questions or say, because right after, it's almost like every year right afterwards, they think about it. Well, I'd like to come back. Just ask them again the next time around. It's like, I think with me, had somebody really tried to push me when I was away, I might have pushed me further away. But the fact that I just had left, I know that some people just need that gentle, come on, then we'll have dessert afterwards. We'll have some wine, we'll have some dessert afterwards. And like, I really enjoyed that. I think I'd like to come again. Sure, how about next Sunday? They don't always make it, but, and they kind of maybe fall off a little bit as time goes by, but you just keep trying.
And why is that important to you both, to do that, evangelization?
It's so hard to describe, and the feeling that you get knowing how important Christ is and that He's always with you. And someone dear to me was at Adoration not too long ago, and they have someone they care very much about. And she said she was in tears. And she said, I could not believe that they don't understand how beautiful this is, how much Jesus is a part of us. And it's true. It's like, how do you get someone to understand that? They need to experience it. They need to experience it every day, but they also need to experience it in church. So it just became important to share with people how beautiful it is to be part of the body of Christ.
It's just part of what Christ told us, is to go out and spread the word, and that's the way to do it. You have to get them back in. Because the family that we're really good friends with, they're very Christ-like. We just want them to start coming back to church regularly, because they're sweet people.
Amazing.
And we just love them, but we're working on it.
Oh, that's a wonderful thing to do. How have your lives been changed by your participation in all the ministries that you're involved in here?
Sometimes it's tiring. But I don't know, I feel more fulfilled. I was emptier before. I feel filled up when I'm doing something and I see I've accomplished something. And it's so funny too. I guess my son answered for me, and it was my moment of when I felt like I'd done something right. He helped me with one of the projects that Rebecca had assigned or asked me to do, as far as helping somebody with something. And he turned to the person and said, "Thanks for letting us come help you in your house." It's like, that's the way I feel, and I couldn't believe he turned and said that on his own. And that kind of that's the way I feel. Thanks for letting me into your house to be able to do something for you. And he said it, and I just was floored that he turned around and said it without any prompting. So it's like, well, that's what I want. That's what I've been trying to do.
Is there anything else you'd like to say about your faith journey? Anything we haven't talked about?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think we've had so many struggles, little things and big things. And I have kidney disease. And it was a long road. And they were talking transplant. They were talking dialysis. And it was really tough. And that was about the time, just as things were really at their top. I was on high doses of steroids. Lewis lost his job, which, of course, was our insurance benefits. And I went to one doctor who was kind of like, oh, we'll just worry about it. It was just a very high volume office, and we weren't very important. And then we ended up using state insurance, and we were at VCU. And, VCU is huge. They're busy. Everything's just kind of rush, rush, rush. But I got to the doctor after about a year, and my numbers looked great. And she looked at me, this hospital that has no religious affiliation, and she says, I don't know how. I have no idea. She goes, the only thing I can think of is that it was prayer. I was just floored. This doctor just met me, shared faith with me. So I think everywhere you look, there's a little bit of your faith journey every time. It's amazing. So that's probably the strongest thing, that everywhere I look, there's a little bit of God.
Do you feel like that's a miracle?
I do. And I remember crying many, many times at church saying, God, you gave us these 3 beautiful children. I cannot believe that I am going to die right after you gave me these beautiful children, because they were 4 and 5 years old. And so I said, I know you wouldn't do that. I know you wouldn't. And, it's amazing that things just seem to be regular, on par. Doctors are really happy. Ended up my permanent doctor goes here to St. Mary's. I mean, just all the time, there just seem to be little miracles just in your life.
And your health is good?
Yeah.
Outstanding.
He stepped in a number of times. Like Samuel, our youngest, she was pregnant with him, and she had an OB appointment we were going to go to. And we got there, and the doctor, well, actually it was a technician, I think, was making these weird while she was doing the ultrasound. So then the doctor came in and started doing some. And the doctor said, this is in the afternoon, the doctor said, well, we're kind of concerned that, she's lost quite a bit of amniotic fluid. So we'd like you to go over to talk to our perinatologist who has better equipment. And she's going to stay late, and we want you to go now. That was an indication that something was wrong.
Yeah.
So we went over to the perinatologist, and she also did an ultrasound. And she said, well, one of the pockets they measured as amniotic fluid is actually umbilical cord. She said, you're less than 24 hours away from losing this baby. And if you hadn't had this appointment, you probably would have miscarried. You're delivering the baby either tonight or in the morning. And so one of the reasons, well, his name is Samuel, partly because one of my favorite uncles, but also it means gift from God. And I felt like that was one of his gifts to us, because I can't believe that wasn't his intervention to keep us from losing him. And so, one of the other instances where he just seemed to step in and help us out.
That's amazing. Wow. Well, thank you both very much for sharing your story and being
Thank you.
such a wonderful part of this wonderful community.